leaders have expressed shock. President Emmanuel Macron said France shared the indignation of the American people. The German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, called the attack despicable, adding that such acts of violence threaten democracy. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, said the United States should take stock of what she alleged were its policies of inciting hatred. BBC News. 26 people have been killed in renewed fighting between armed groups in eastern Congo. Fighters allied with the Cooperative for the Development of Congo clashed with Hema militants in Ituri province. The latest violence erupted over control of Pluto, a strategic trading centre near several mining sites. Congolese forces managed to quell the fighting on Saturday night. A government advisor in Britain has called for an inquiry into the intimidation of politicians during the recent general election. In a letter seen by the BBC, John Woodcock said there was a concerted campaign by extremists against some members of Parliament. He said there was an alarming pattern of incidents, including a hammer attack on an MP's office and meetings being interrupted by masked men. The leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, has sacked or demoted several senior officials for mishandling a major development project. State media say Mr. Kim blamed them for being irresponsible and causing financial losses during his flagship project in Samjeon. He announced the decision on a visit to the town, which North Korea has been attempting to turn into a tourist destination with new roads and hotels. Tens of thousands of football fans from England and Spain are in Berlin for the final of Euro 2024 later today. England are hoping to lift their first major men's trophy in nearly 6 decades. Spain are the favourites to win, as Mark Lowen reports from Madrid.
On the streets of the Spanish capital, the flags and giant screens are going up as this football-mad nation buzzes with excitement. And for all the hope in England, there is confidence in Spain, who go into tonight's match knowing they're the favourites as the tournament's highest scorers, having won every game. Spaniards will be cheering on their stars like Lamine Yamal, who turned just 17 yesterday and is hopeful of the perfect birthday present tonight.
Mark Lowen reporting, BBC News.
Hello and welcome to From Our Own Correspondent here on the BBC World Service. I'm Pascal Harter. Coming up, we hear how in Australia, often known as a migration nation, immigrants with a disability or a serious medical condition struggle to stay in the country. In Nigeria, the word that for some means the promise of new opportunities and to others symbolises homesickness and longing. And in India, how jewellery reflects what Hindus and Muslims have long shared and some politicians would tear apart. But first, the events that seem to stand out among months and years of war. How much do they move the needle of international support? In Ukraine, just recently, 40 people were killed in a single day of multiple missile attacks. Among them, it will be the strike on Ukraine's main hospital for children the same day that will surely be remembered as a particularly sordid point in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Moscow denies responsibility for attacking the hospital, which provides cancer care to children and organ transplants. Kyiv, though, is in little doubt. President Zelensky called Vladimir Putin a bloody criminal after sick children were carried out of the wreckage, still attached to drips. World leaders at the next day's NATO meeting in Washington condemned the attack. Their $43 billion aid package to Ukraine will already have been agreed, but perhaps it did strengthen resolve. And inside the country, says James Waterhouse, that aid feels more urgent than ever.
As the Ukraine correspondent, I have the gift of departure. Unlike male Ukrainian colleagues, I was able to leave the country to spend a couple of weeks in the UK on leave. On the last weekend of June, I was lucky enough to be at the Glastonbury Music Festival, where I absorbed just some of the overwhelming choice in bands and DJs. Following weekend, I was making the 13-hour car journey from Krakow in Poland back to my base in Kyiv. I browsed our team's WhatsApp group, where we share news updates. There was a flurry of posts from the Ukrainian Air Force in the morning. Attention, 5 Tu-95 bombers have taken off in Russia's Murmansk region, read one. Missiles reportedly launched from the Caspian Sea. Estimated time of arrival, 11 a.m, ran another. showed us her phone footage from when she emerged. She was hysterically screaming. "Whose hand is that?" she could be heard shouting when she sees a severed limb. It belonged to a doctor who'd been treating her daughter. He was dead. She had told her husband on the phone that she didn't know if Sonia was alive. Thankfully, she was. The 16-year-old told us she came round to find the ceiling close to her face and was reunited with her mother as she was taken to another hospital. She'd only suffered a few scratches. We then went to film a Kyiv apartment block which had been struck in the same attack. It was a sight I've seen time after time. A whole chunk of the building was missing. Down below was a crater, piles of bricks and twisted metal. 14 people died there, 5 were children. It took 3 days to retrieve their bodies from the rubble. We also went to the funeral of one of 5 doctors who'd been killed when a separate health clinic had been struck. The faces of grief make this all the harder to compute. Moscow denied targeting civilian areas and blamed Ukrainian air defences, but evidence to the contrary is mounting. There is already a catalogue of cities, towns and villages it has reduced to rubble. Aim of liberation. By the end of this bruising week, President Zelensky emerged with more Western military aid offerings and several security agreements. But despite the declarations of gratitude, he's getting a fraction of what he wants. There's also a troubling unknown he can't shake off. Whether all these Western promises will be enough to carry his embattled country to victory. What he does know is that Russian missiles will continue to haunt his skies.
That was James Waterhouse. Australia is a migration nation. Fully a third of its population today was born abroad, and these days it prides itself on its multiculturalism. But it also has a history of making very strict rules about who is allowed in. There was the former White Australia policy, which limited non-European immigration until the 1970s. More recently, it's taken stringent measures against people arriving by boat without papers. Many of them were detained in facilities on the Pacific island of Nauru. And even today, there is one big exception to the Australian welcome: people with disabilities or long-term medical conditions. Foreigners in this category may be denied Australian residence permits or even entry visas. The concern is that they'll end up as burdens on the health system. But recently, says Katie Watson, campaigners have been pressuring government ministers to change this.
Moving to a new country is always exciting. New places, new people, new experiences. But when you're shifting across 14 time zones and more than 13,000 kilometres with 4 small children, it's also a major logistical exercise. Our first step towards our new life down under was to get a visa, a complicated process made easier by a migration agent guiding us through it. But within the first few minutes of our initial conversation, any enthusiasm about moving was promptly shut down. The visa you're applying for will not enable you to stay in the country permanently, she told us. We have no intention of staying forever anyway. But then we were told of another sticking point. If we did want to go the permanent route, our son Otis would likely prevent that, or at best make it incredibly difficult. Why? Because he has Down syndrome. For me, it felt pretty grotesque. This is the 21st century. Surely we should be working on ending disability discrimination. As I discovered, Australia is one of few countries that routinely rejects immigrants' visas on the basis of their medical needs. As part of the visa process, I then had to fill in a questionnaire for all my children. And one of the questions was, do you have a physical or intellectual disability that makes it difficult for you to function independently or be able to work full-time? I replied that I couldn't say yes to this question. Yes, Otis has Down syndrome, which is an intellectual disability. But no, that does not make it difficult for him to function independently or work full-time. The impediment to that, I explained, is the fact that he was 2 years old. I pointed out that none of our children were yet independent or able to hold down a full-time job. But the migration agent suggested that this kind of argument wouldn't help me get a visa. I had to swallow my pride, suck up their ableism, and say yes, my child had a disability impeding independence and holding down a job. I felt totally unable to advocate for Otis. The Australian government argues that it has to look at costs. including possible future or long-term costs, to curb government spending and protect its citizens' access to healthcare. But the thing is, I've spoken to lots of immigrant parents who said that their child didn't access any extra services anyway. Still, Australia analyses cases by taking a blanket approach. The authorities look at what healthcare an Australian would be eligible for, and if it's too expensive, the migrant fails their health requirement. Some visas allow you to appeal the decision, even taking it to the minister and pleading on compassionate grounds, but it's a lengthy and costly process. I'm not saying that governments shouldn't consider costs. Every country has a right to decide who to let in. But treating a person only as a negative burden is not just outdated, it's wrong. Who's to say someone with a disability or a health condition won't work and pay taxes, contributing more than they cost? Or that their contribution might be more in kind, teaching other students about inclusion and difference. Their family might also bring much needed skills and financial contributions to Australia. One woman I spoke to, Hannah Zadlow, said her family was rejected on the basis of her son's autism diagnosis. Originally from Poland, she and her husband had spent 15 years in the UK working in the NHS. They knew their skills would be in demand in Australia, but despite Connor going to mainstream school and not needing extra support, and the fact that they had to have private health insurance initially so they wouldn't have even been using health services, the diagnosis meant they were unable to take up their jobs. Stories like this are everywhere. Campaigners here have long been calling for change, and they hope that there will soon be some improvements. If we say to people with disability, you're not welcome here, we're also saying to people already living with disability in this country, you're not welcome here either, says Jan Goodwood. She's a migration agent who often assists disabled people and their families. We got lucky. Otis was let in, but we're only here temporarily. Clearly, he wasn't burdensome enough to rule us out. But I prefer to look at it the other way. Australia got lucky by having Otis in the country for a few years. His friendly wave as he heads out in the morning makes his neighbours smile. He's a kind and considerate preschooler. And most importantly, his existence teaches understanding. And that, in a country that prides itself on inclusion and diversity, is worth more than some alarming sums on a migration form.
That was Katie Watson. You're listening to From Our Own Correspondent here on the BBC World Service. I'm Pascal Harter. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, with more than 200 million people, and 2/3 of them are under the age of 25. Nigeria is also the continent's economic powerhouse. So why are so many of its young people trying to leave? Last year, Nigerian authorities issued a record number of passports, 1.9 million, to those looking to travel abroad, whether for the short or the long term. It's become so common that there's even a term for it, Japa. Hannah Gelbart has been speaking to students in Lagos about what Japa means for them and what it means for the country that they're trying to leave behind.
Nigerians have always got something to say. Students at the University of Lagos are more than happy to stop and chat to me in the shade of a weeping fig tree. It's clear they adore their country, but nearly all of them have one thing in common. They just can't wait to leave. And that choice, to stay or go, can be summed up in one word, Japa. It's a Yoruba word, one of the more than 500 languages spoken in Nigeria, and it means to escape. Michael, a maths student, tells me it's something everyone here wants to do. He can't wait to graduate, so he can get away from Nigeria's economic crunch, everyday problems with the electricity supply, and crime on the streets of Lagos. Politicians here talk of Japa syndrome, an illness that symbolises everything that's wrong with Nigeria and has infiltrated the
necklace worn by Hindu women, literally translated from Sanskrit as auspicious thread, not too dissimilar to a wedding ring, a sign of marriage, and in this instance, perhaps a sign of cross-cultural influences between Hindus and Muslims. On a practical day-to-day level, the communities are not so dissimilar. Holidays are celebrated with the same kinds of foods and sweets. Both communities wear intricately designed saris or colorfully embroidered lehengas. Women cover their hair when entering mosques or temples. Then there is this beautiful necklace that comes in a variety of designs and lengths, but all with the signature black and gold beading. The married woman's necklace, a tradition that one probably borrowed from the other, a piece of jewelry that represents the best of a night, how a custom can be shared between two cultures. But I hesitated to wear one. Why? In the last decade, many of the country's 200 million Muslims have said they are increasingly fearful living under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's right-wing Hindu nationalist government. Discriminatory and divisive policies have led to increased violence against minorities, as textbooks and history books are being revised and rewritten in India. Would the same fate befall examples of two communities being influenced by one another also be erased? Adding to my hesitation was a campaign speech in April by Mr. Modi. Just 2 days after the first of 7 phases of voting in the country, there was a significant shift in messaging. Perhaps sensing some unease among his core supporters, the Prime Minister reverted to anti-Muslim rhetoric to try and shore up his base. To a crowd in the state of Rajasthan, Mr. Modi claimed falsely about his competitors in the Congress Party. They will calculate how much gold your mothers and sisters have and redistribute the property to Muslims. Not even your Mangalsutra is safe. His speech in Rajasthan became a defining moment in the recent elections. He also politicized the piece of jewelry I have worn thousands of times. That kind of hateful rhetoric continued through the campaign, but it did not deliver the resounding victory Mr. Modi wanted. Yes, he is Prime Minister for a third term, but his ruling political party, the BJP, was unable to get enough seats for a full majority. For the first time in his political career, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is running a coalition government. His electoral defeat gave people hope that the politics of division, so prevalent during the last decade, may finally take a back seat to the country's more pressing issues. That India's community is not built out of big abstract ideas, but out of mundane shared items and common daily rituals. His electoral defeat was a rejection of trying to separate communities that have lived side by side for centuries. On that Tuesday morning, I did wear a gali kilt, and have done so several more times since.
Samira Hussain. That's all for this edition of the programme. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Caroline Bailey. And we'll be back again next weekend here on the BBC World Service.
This is the BBC World Service with a Turkish football team that became a beacon of hope.
In 2023, Antakya was almost wiped from the map in a devastating earthquake.
We were in 9th floor. It collapsed in 15 seconds.
Despite suffering tragedies of their own, their football team vowed to keep going.
And we need to and we want to do our best to make people of Hatay smile again.
Inspiring a city desperately in need of hope, helping those off and on the pitch.
Ben yaklaşık bir ay football actually was my therapy because I realized that when I got on the pitch, I forgot about everything else and that positive energy helped me move through that.
Join James Montague to find out if the team that emerged from the rubble can avoid relegation too.
Shaken Goalposts, Thursday at 8:30 and 19 GMT, or listen now wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Coming up on the BBC World Service.
On fait le café, la cuisine et le service.
We make the coffees, cook the food, wait the tables, everything.
Jokes too, says your colleague at the till.
Et c'est ça parce que lui fait des blagues.
That's because he's always joking, that one.
I'm John Lawrenson, and on the food chain this week, we take you to restaurants employing people with learning disabilities in Paris, Mumbai and Istanbul. After the news.
BBC News with Moira Alderson. Former US President Donald Trump has survived an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania. The FBI and local police said the gunman who made the attempt from a nearby roof killed a spectator and wounded 2 other people. In a social media post, Mr. Trump said a bullet had pierced his ear. shooter has been identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. The FBI said they still do not know his motive. The US President Joe Biden said he was grateful to hear that Donald Trump was safe. Mr. Trump's campaign managers said that despite the shooting, Mr. Trump would still be taking part in this week's Republican National Convention. In other news, 26 people have been killed in renewed fighting between armed groups in eastern Congo. Fighters allied with the Cooperative for the Development of Congo clashed with Hema militants in Ituri province. Emergency and health officials in Gaza say at least 17 Palestinians have been killed and dozens wounded in Israeli strikes across the enclave on Sunday morning. The Israeli army said its fighters had eliminated what it called terrorists. The British government's advisor on political violence has called for an investigation into the intimidation of candidates during the recent general election campaign. Lord Wolney said he believed there was a concerted campaign by extremists against some members of parliament. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has sacked or demoted several senior officials for mishandling a major development project. State media say Mr. Kim blamed them for causing financial losses during efforts to redevelop the town of Samjeon. Tens of thousands of football fans from England and Spain are in Berlin for the final of Euro 2024. England are hoping to lift their first major men's trophy in nearly 6 decades. Spain are the favourites for today's match. BBC News.
I'm in a large, quite chic cafe in what is quite a classy, businessy neighbourhood of Paris, not far from the Champs-Élysées. This cafe is one of the most recent openings of a highly successful chain called Café Joyeux, joyous or happy cafes, I suppose, in English. There are 21 of them now, all over France, but also in Brussels, Lisbon, and even, since a few weeks ago, New York, employing over 200 people. What's special about these places is that most of the staff have learning disabilities, some of the more serious forms of autism and Down syndrome. This is the food chain on the BBC World Service with me, John Lawrenson, and this week in India and Turkey and here in Paris, we'll be hearing why it is a very good idea to have people with learning disabilities making and serving food.
Moi, je m'appelle la France, j'ai 36 ans et je suis caipière du Café Joyeux.
My name is Anne Frox. I am 36 and I'm a crew member at the Café Joyeux. I have Down syndrome. It slows me down. I find it difficult to understand things. I need to be able to take my time. But that's my only problem.
Et donc vous faites le service par exemple? You seem to master waiting the tables very well.
That's because I know how to serve people. It's my job and I'm good at it.
Is this your first job?
Non, parce qu'avant j'étais en entreprise adaptée.
No. Before this I was in a business adapted for people with special needs. A laundry. Because I really like laundry. But then I applied for a job here. I sent them a video application and they said it would be really good for me. And it's true. I've really flourished here and I take public transport on my own to come to work. I know how to do that.
Why has it been such a flourishing experience for you working here?
Ben, c'est que tu rencontres d'autres personnes que tu ne vois pas forcément ailleurs.
Before, I didn't meet people like I do here. The customers, I mean. It's really important for me to meet other people. People from outside.
You've been here for 2 years?
Yes, but first I did a year's training with the Café Joyeux, and now I can do everything. Make the coffees, prepare and cook the food, wait the tables. I am versatile, like all the crew members. All of us can do everything.
Jones too says you're crying at the till.
C'est déjà parce que lui fait des blagues.
That's because he's always joking, that one.
I settle down at a table where another waiter brings me my order. I go for a tea and, new on the menu, a biscuit speciality from Marseille with a lot of pine nuts on the top. Love pine nuts, but then who doesn't? I'm waiting for Yann Bucaille, who founded the Café Joyeux coming up for 7 years ago. I've been told I'll know it's him when he arrives if I look at his shoes. He wears trainers that don't match, like one red one and one blue one. I must ask him about that. I finished the pine nut special and still everyone's wearing matching shoes.
peu d'amour.
I don't ask him about the quiche, but I'm thinking that's probably good too. You may not have heard of Thierry Marx, unless you're French. He's a big chef here, kind of a bald Jamie Oliver, a famous British TV chef. And it's Marx who concocted the menus. Fast food à la française, croque monsieur, more or less cheese on toast, as you probably know, quiches, les sandwiches, les salades, simple, good, fairly healthy, all made on the premises. Jan arrives, tall, enthusiastic, a bit of the old je ne sais quoi, French charisma. I don't have to look at his shoes to know he's the boss. In fact, I forget all about them and ask him to tell us the story of how the Café Joyeux began.
Yeah, that's something that was not expected at all in our life with my wife. Is we were running this organization with this big sailing boat that we had built, and that was conceived to have wheelchair access. And every cruise we embark 30 people. Most of them are elderly people, but it can be refugees, people from a hospital. We embark prisoners with their guardians, and a lot of people with disability. And the trigger of Café Joyeux was launched on this boat. When I met this young adult called Theo with autism, and he requested for a job and said, "Captain, I heard you're an employer, you're an entrepreneur. Do you have a job for me?" And while I thought he was maybe asking too much, I was already sort of proud of myself to take him on board, you know, and he insisted, so I said, "No, I don't have a job for you." And his face, that was so joyful after a great cruise, became suddenly close, and he became angry. And he said, "It's not fair. Because, yes, Captain, I have a disability, but I want to be useful, like you. I can have a job like you." And this was a sort of a switch for me. I realized how important it is to have a job in life, not to go for a sailing cruise. I realized how important it is, all the more so when you have a fragility, because you want to show that you're part of the game. And I realized that in this society, especially when you look at the numbers, the system adds difficulties, adds sort of a disability to people who need more support. And it was a trigger for us and for my wife to say, let's find out what we can offer to these people.
There are 700,000 people in France with autism and 35,000 with Down syndrome. The numbers are growing across the world as well. Jan says fewer than 1 in 100 French people with a learning disability are in work, which he says is totally unfair, because that's how we often define ourselves, by the job we do or the company we work for. Why do so few people with learning disabilities find work, do you think?
Some of them have been kicked out of school because of their difference. They haven't been given a chance by employers, and companies are very much performance driven. And it is very sad, because we prove that once you give a chance to these people, they can do the job, they are capable. It's just that you have to think differently, you have to adjust. And once you adjust, I mean, it's full of surprises. And our Joyeux crew members, they even have a sort of a superpower. They bring joy, as simple as that.
When I was researching this, I came up across a bit of criticism of the concept of the joyousness of your cafes. You will have seen this. The people with learning disabilities are just people. They're not more or less joyful than anyone else. So you shouldn't stereotype them as joyful. What do you say to that?
I would say that joy is not a way to say because they have a difference, they are joyful, or because they have a disability, they are joyful, and because we are neurotypical, we are sad. No, I think the joy is something that comes when we all are linked and working together.
While we're talking, the father of one of the employees comes into the cafe. Jan introduces us. Jacques is his name. His son Arnaud has been working in various Parisian cafés joyeux for 5 years. I ask him about its impact on their lives, and quite quickly he takes us to that subject we were just discussing with Jan. He says that in the case of his son, his disability has a negative side but also a positive one.
Ça change beaucoup de choses parce que je vois Arnaud qui est joyeux.
It changes a lot of things because I see Arnaud happy when he goes to work. Already that for father is wonderful. Also it has given him independence and team spirit and the feeling of being accepted for what he is. Arnaud has Down syndrome, so he is different. Intellectually he understands things less well than other people. In the other hand, with his heart, he understands things much better than other people. His heart is open, effortlessly open.
Sans faire d'effort, je dirais.
Moi, je suis convive. Alors, je vois la vitrine, c'est ça à quoi cette vitrine?
In a room at the back of the cafe, a training session is underway. The teacher shows a picture of a refrigerated dessert display case. It's to make us, prompts the teacher, and the girl says, a present? And laughs when she realises it's the wrong answer, to a slightly startling degree. She laughs, the other students laugh, the teacher laughs, I laugh. It's a bit of a café joyeux moment. The right answer, in case you're struggling, is it makes us want to eat a dessert. Restaurants in France, as in many other countries, have been in a deep recruitment crisis since COVID. Many cooks and serving staff never went back to their jobs after being sent home during the lockdowns. There are now 200,000 unfilled vacancies in French hotels, restaurants and cafes, with many closing down because of a lack of staff. Jan Bukai thinks employing people with learning disabilities could be part of the solution.
We think we can both bring an answer to these companies as well as find a possibility to recruit people with autism. That's why we created a school. The idea is that the crew members from our school can finally find a job in an ordinary company once they have their diploma.
Do you change things to make the job easier for people with autism, people with Down syndrome?
Yes, we adapt. We have tools. We adapt the softwares, the cashier. We adapt the recipes. We use a lot of drawings instead of writing and instead of words. But most important, I would say, is to adapt the overall perception on how to run a company. If you think short term, don't think about hiring people with disability too fast. If you're patient, by taking time and training them, you'll get a lot of great surprises, and it's going to be fruitful. Everyone adapts. The guests as well. Customers, they adapt because they understand that they shouldn't be as demanding in terms of speed. We have to accept the fact that we will not be as fast as Starbucks or McDonald's. But the guests know that as well.
Not that the big fast food corporations don't have a role to play when it comes to unlocking the employment of people with disabilities. Au contraire, we'll hear from fried chicken chain KFC in Turkey later on. Mark Capper is Head of Development at the British Learning Disability charity MENCAP. The official UK statistic on the employment of people with learning disabilities is 4.8%, higher than the French one, but still very low. Do we have any idea how many people with these disabilities want to work?
Research that had been carried out by MENCAP in 2022 found that 86% of people with a learning disability that we surveyed who didn't have a job said that they would like to be working. So, there's an untapped labour market really that employers are missing out on.
Are there specific benefits when you hire people with learning disabilities?
The feedback in terms of information that we've gathered from employers, the types of business benefits are that people with a learning disability tend to stay in entry-level jobs longer. They have significantly lower sickness absence. We've heard stories about people who've been in work for 25 or 30 years and never had a single sickness absence day. Staff morale, you can't put that in a job description, but the amount of employers that come back and say, by employing this person, the morale in our team grew. The perception of that employer by their own employees is improved by the fact that they've taken on somebody with a learning disability, and also the customer base. Our data suggests that customers are significantly more likely to purchase from a company that has good morals and sort of employs people with a disability, and is sort of publicly seen to be doing so.
Why is it so good for morale, do you think?
I think it stems from that sort of perhaps negative experience in schools, and then that value an employer places on somebody in a society that can quite often be cruel to people with a learning disability. You know, we see sort of statistics around hate crime and bullying. So when an employer invests in that person, the feeling that that gives them of value and, you know, purpose means that they come to work with a smile on their face. You know, they come to work wanting to be there, and they work hard because they want to be there, and they give their all. And actually, you know, that's incredibly rewarding for a manager to see somebody coming in with an attitude to really want to, you know, give their all at work. And when the colleagues see, actually, this guy is really giving their all, that is contagious within the workforce, and we've seen it time and time again. There are a few sectors really that stand out, but certainly hospitality is one. Some people prefer the sort of behind the scenes kitchen type work, but equally there are others who, you know, really flourish in sort of customer facing roles. And, you know, that impact of having somebody who's very positive in a role where they are, you know, the liaison with the customer is a good look for an employer.
Mark Capper from the UK charity MenCap. You're listening to The Food Chain on the BBC World Service with me, John Lawrence. Now we're going to Mumbai. Rickshaws, bikes, cars and mopeds jockey for position along quite a well-to-do street lined with coconut palms and mango trees in the Mumbai suburb of Juhu. We're close to the sea, and on a good hot day you can smell dried fish in the air. On the side of this busy road, almost lost in the foliage of fig trees in pots, is Cafe Arti.
Welcome to Cafe Arti, please have a seat.
A young woman called Arti welcomes you.
Here's the menu card. Please order at the counter when you're ready.
Arti is 37, she has autism. It's thanks to her that this cafe exists. It was because of her that her mother, Sushama Nagarkar, founded it.
In 2015, we launched what in Mumbai is called a tiffin service, a dabba service, which is we provided home-cooked meals to students, to officers, and, you know, older people and things like that. And we realized that adults with these kinds of disabilities are very successful when they're working as part of a team. We got a lot of positive press, and a lot of people wanted to join our work. Unfortunately, the dabba service was in a 200 square foot space, and therefore we took the next step to start Cafe Urban, where we hoped and kind of knew that our individuals could be successful. So we have a young person with autism, Nikhil. Now, as you know, persons with autism, they have a lot of strengths, and his is he doesn't make mistakes, and when he does a job, he does it really well. Now the challenge is that if there are too many people, it's noisy and crowded, he gets a little overwhelmed. We can provide support for that, but we know we can rely on Nikhil to open the cafe, to shut the cafe, to make sure the cash tallies. So we recognized Nikhil's skills and started sending him to the bank. So that too was something that was right up his alley. He enjoyed it. He made friends in the bank. In fact, sometimes when I go or somebody else is going, they'll ask, why hasn't he come today? He meaning Nikhil. We have another person, Aaron by name, also a person with autism. He has excellent visual memory, but other than that, he is passionate about food and cooking. So he virtually is able to man the kitchen in the cafe all by himself.
Yash Charitable Trust, that Sushama Nagarkar founded as an umbrella NGO, employs 21 people with learning disabilities overall. It has a bakery, a cafe inside an IT company, and the tiffin service, as well as Cafe Arpan, which has 5 employees on shift at any one time, making coffees hot and cold, and serving simple, mostly Western food, sometimes with an Indian twist.
I'm making pasta nadada.
Our cafe is pure vegetarian because we are situated in that part of Mumbai where pure vegetarian would be the food of choice. The cafe offers salads, sandwiches, hummus. We make breads ourselves. We make our own pita. We have pizzas. Among the cold beverages, we have limbu soda, which is lemon soda. It's got a slightly Indian twist to it because it's got mint in it as well. The filter coffee is very Indian. It's an Indian decoction, as we call it, of coffee in which you pour hot milk. Garam chai is hot tea, but it is boiled tea. It's not brewed. And it's boiled to the right consistency with some ginger and some tea masala.
Is it also important for these individuals you employ and for their families to be earning a proper wage?
Definitely. We have 6 individuals who are below poverty line as defined locally. And so for those families, the income that our guys earn is very important to them. And they contribute to the family and to the household. And how powerful is that? And then the family's perception changes as well. They no longer look at the disability as being front and center.
One hummus pita bread. Hummus pita bread. One methi puri chaat.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
That's it. Please have a seat. We'll serve you.
Okay, thank you.
We've had people work with us who've moved on. So we have 2 people working in Soho House. It's a club. We've got another 2 people working in, I think it's 4-star or 5-star hotel. We've got somebody else working with JP Morgan. Somebody else has joined a local business. So we do a variety, but it has to match the person's interests and strengths and what the employer needs. We try and customize.
Sushama Nagarkar, the founder of Cafe Arpan, a local initiative in Mumbai. The sound of Kentucky Fried Chicken's restaurant in Siyakenchi on the western bank of the Bosphorus in Istanbul. Fast food corporations like KFC are huge employers. In Turkey alone, the Colonel has over 300 restaurants with over 5,000 staff. Since the end of last year, it's been employing some people with learning disabilities in some Istanbul KFCs, including these 3 employees. These testimonies were recorded by their managers.
My name is Kayan. I work at KFC. I look around the lobby, making tea and coffee, mopping, opening the safe. I am happy with all my managers. I am happy with my friends. I love them so much. May the gods bless you. I love you very much.
My name is Narefsan. I work at KFC. I wipe trays, tidying up the lobby, wiping the tables. I make coleslaw, fries, mashed potatoes and salad. I prepare deliveries. I pour the drinks. I like preparing deliveries best. Me and my colleagues hang out together during our breaks. I am happy. They help and support me. I love my colleagues very much.
Merhaba, ben İlal.
Hello, I am Ilal. I love my managers at KFC. I love you all very much. I prepare the trays, I make gravy and mashed potatoes. I make coffee, I mop. With the money I earn here, I want to buy a house somewhere. I want to buy a car. I want to make my mother live in palaces. I want to take care of my mother. I have an older brother, but he died. I love him so much. His name is Okan.
The woman in charge of KFC's Turkish operations is Middle East and North Africa region manager Özge Zorayoglu. She is Turkish herself, although she's based
this year as well in our restaurants. However, I'd like to also touch base that we have a huge pipeline that we're working on to make sure that this is going to scale very soon.
And how's it going so far?
Amazing. I mean, what I can say is our employees also awareness of diversity and inclusion in the workplace increased, and their bond as one team strengthened as well. And it's the overall interaction with the consumers creating this positive environment in our restaurants is also amazing.
They had one slightly jittery moment, Osgay tells me, when one of their employees with Down syndrome disappeared. But he'd just gone for a quick wander around the shopping mall. He was actually on his break, she says. It's just that usually employees stay on the premises. Anyway, this led to a bit of a step forward for all the employees at that restaurant, she says, because they held a meeting and decided that going round the mall during breaks is fine, as long as you tell the manager first. Back at the Café Joyeux in Paris, Jan's gone, and I forgot to ask him about his wearing different coloured trainers. So I look it up on my phone and find this quote of his. It's to show that difference is an opportunity. It would be difficult to walk if we had two left feet. Thanks very much to everyone who's taken part in this week's programme, from Paris, Mumbai, Istanbul, Dubai and Milton Keynes. If you have any comments or stories for us about disabilities in foodie workplaces, our email is thefoodchain@bbc.co.uk. From me, John Lawrenson, and all of us at The Food Chain, goodbye.
This is the BBC World Service. We're in the El Garbia region in Egypt to uncover the hidden side of a trade that feeds one of the richest, most exclusive industries in the world.
The documentary brings you award-winning journalism, unheard voices, amazing culture, and global issues.
We try to look at the bigger picture.
The documentary at bbcworldservice.com or wherever you get your BBC podcasts. In 30 minutes, The Fifth Floor with Feranak Amidi.
Women stepping in for men as lorry drivers and construction workers. As the war in Ukraine enters its third year, we look into how the conscription of men is impacting the society and whether attitudes are changing to military service.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
I'm Myra Anubi, and today on People Fixing the World from the BBC World Service, we're talking about mental health and finding out about different ways to get people the help they need. We'll go to the US to hear how one state is responding to emergency calls related to mental health.
I looked in and they didn't look very professional, but by the time I got to his apartment, they had him talking like they were best friends.
And later, we head over to Denmark to find out about a surprising prescription.
As a person that doesn't really sing that much, I was like, oh no, this is going to be scary, but it's a really enjoyable and surprisingly fun experience.
So let's talk about ideas helping people with mental health conditions on People Fixing the World right after the BBC News.
Hello, I'm Maura Alderson with the BBC News. Donald Trump has survived an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania. The FBI and local police say the gunman, who was on a nearby roof, killed a spectator and wounded two others before being shot dead by snipers. Security agents rushed to protect the former US president and hurried him off stage with blood on his face. Pennsylvania State Police Chief George Bivens explained the situation at a press conference earlier.
There was a grandstand, a very large area, a lot of people there when this all unfolded. The former president had come out and begun to speak, and within about 10 to 15 minutes, a number of sounds were heard, and it became apparent that shots were being fired in that direction. It was a chaotic scene.
Jenny Kumar.
We've had more detail come forward about the man that has been named as a subject involved in this assassination, Matthew Crooks, who's 20, from Bethel Park in Pennsylvania. We understand that he is a registered Republican voter, but there are federal campaign finance reports that show he gave $15 to a progressive political action committee on the day that President Biden was sworn in. What we don't know yet is the motive behind this shocking attack.
The US President Joe Biden has returned to the White House, cutting short a weekend trip to receive a security briefing on the attack on Donald Trump. Earlier, in a televised address, he urged everybody to condemn the assassination attempt. Other world leaders also expressed their shock at the shooting. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida called for firm resistance against any form of violence that challenges democracy. In other news, health and emergency officials in Gaza say at least 17 Palestinians have been killed and dozens wounded in Israeli strikes across the enclave on Sunday morning. There are reports at least 10 people were killed in a strike on a residential tower in Gaza City. The Israeli army said its fighters had eliminated what it called terrorists. The incidents come a day after 90 Palestinians were killed by Israeli airstrikes in an area designated as a humanitarian zone. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said there's no proof yet that the two men targeted while senior Hamas military leaders were killed. World news from the BBC. 26 people have been killed in renewed fighting between armed groups in eastern Congo. Fighters allied with the Cooperative for the Development of Congo clashed with Hema militant in Ituri province. Richard Kakoe reports.
The latest violence erupted over control of Pluto, a strategic trading center near several mining sites. Congolese forces managed to quell the fighting, which lasted for more than 4 hours on Saturday. The clash has left many people injured, including 4 Congolese soldiers. Many residents have fled their homes to take shelter in secure areas. The governor of Ituri province has asked the army to pursue the attackers, accusing them of threatening to derail an ongoing peace process. Militia groups in the mineral-rich region have clashed in recent weeks as they jostle for control over artisanal mines.
A government advisor in Britain has called for an inquiry into the intimidation of politicians during the recent general election. In a letter seen by the BBC, John Woodcock said there was a concerted campaign by extremists against some members of Parliament. He said there was an alarming pattern of incidents, including a hammer attack on an MP's office and meetings being interrupted by masked men. Japan's welfare ministry says the country will need 570,000 more carers by 2040, when its elderly population is expected to peak. The latest figures published by the ministry show the country is struggling with a growing shortage of caregivers, mainly due to low wages. Tens of thousands of football fans from England and Spain are in Berlin for the final of Euro 2024 later today. England are hoping to lift their first major men's trophy in nearly 6 decades. They finished as runners-up at the last Euros 3 years ago, losing on penalties to Italy. Spain are the favourites for today's match, having produced a series of impressive performances throughout the tournament. BBC News.
People fixing the world. Welcome to People Fixing the World from the BBC World Service, a show that's all about solutions, and you could call me your solutions captain. I'm Myra Anubi, and every week I take you around the world to meet the people who are trying to fix some of the most pressing problems we face today. Now, this week we'll be visiting a 911 emergency call center in the US, and then trying a different kind of vitamin in Denmark, all to find out about new ideas that are helping people manage mental health conditions. Now, we're hearing a lot about mental health. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 8 people have a mental health condition. So, for example, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and so many others. And there's still a lot of stigma and discrimination against people who experience these conditions. Now, this often makes it hard for people to get help. And when they do eventually find some access to mental health support, the systems in place aren't always fit for purpose. But that's where our solutions today come in. We'll hear about a couple of projects that are trying to improve mental health treatment. And to start us off, we're heading to the US. Now, in America, when people need urgent help with mental health, often they pick up the phone and call their emergency number, 911. And when this happens, in most cases, police will show up. But mental health advocates have long argued that police aren't the best equipped to deal with these type of situations. And according to our reporter Craig Langren, things are starting to change. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Myra. Yes, so they are finally starting to change.
Which is good. Now, before you tell me about the solution, I'm just thinking the idea of calling for mental health support and then having police officers show up at your doorstep, it's really scary.
It is, and it's important to know that in the US, police officers spend around a fifth of their time responding to mental health crises. But this isn't something they're often trained for. These encounters can have devastating consequences too. Around 1 in 4 fatal police shootings involve someone with a serious mental illness. But it is important to point out that it's a very small proportion of police encounters that end in a fatality.
But Craig, I mean, in some cases, these cops still need to go out. So, for example, if a weapon is involved.
Yeah, that's true. But we're often talking here about instances where no one's in danger at all, but the police still turn up. And that uses police time and resources that could be better spent elsewhere.
Now, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. What have you found?
Yeah, so I recently visited the southwestern US state of Arizona, where they've got a system in place that ensures trained, unarmed mental health professionals can respond to someone in their moment of crisis instead of the police.
Phoenix 911, what's the location of your emergency?
If you call 911 in Phoenix, Arizona's largest city and the 5th largest in the US, your call will probably be answered in a call center by someone like Carla.
Dispatchers, generally, at least here in America, are not considered first responders. And I will say we are the ultimate first responder. Nobody goes anywhere or does anything until we pick up the phone.
You've got, we counted 7 screens. Pretty impressive. It looks like the flight deck of an aeroplane. Are you able to talk me through what's happening on these screens?
Absolutely. So this on my right hand side is my radio screen that has all of my different radio channels on it. And then I have a screen that is my map that links to my computer-aided dispatch system.
Each year in Arizona, around 2 million calls are routed to call centers like this, and around a quarter of those are about someone struggling with their mental health.
And what's going on? My son is acting out. He's got schizophrenia, and I was just trying to see if I can get some help to my house for my son. The new medication that they gave him is just not working, but he's just like going crazy on us today. I just need some more serious help.
In many places in the US, in a situation like this, a police officer will most likely have been dispatched. But here in Arizona, 911 call handlers like Carla are trained to spot when somebody needs mental health support. They then route the call to a separate behavioural health unit, a crack team of counsellors, psychiatrists and social workers. Seeing how this all works at the call centre is one thing, but I wanted to find out what happens next. Outside a grey concrete office block on the edge of town, I meet Counsellor Matthew Moody, who's been heavily involved in this service for years.
So one of the benefits of meeting somebody in person is that you can build a trusting rapport with them much easier, right? You can also see what's going on in their surroundings. Like that can give you a lot of clues and ideas of what's going on. They're going to sit down, meet you where you're at, and have a longer discussion with you, and then come up with a comprehensive plan to help you.
It's 10 p.m. and Matthew and I are joining one of the specialist teams for the night shift.
Tonight the shift is until 6 a.m.
That's Rosalind, one of the crisis support workers on shift tonight. She's casually dressed in jeans and a dark blue t-shirt. In that time, how many calls do you think we might get?
Sometimes our nights are kind of spread out with our calls, and then other times, like it's quiet right now. I don't want to jinx us, but it's quiet right now, and then we'll just get slammed with calls for the next couple hours. You know, every day's different.
Crisis workers like Rosalind usually have a background in counselling, psychiatry, or social work, and they then get further training on the job.
I've been in the behavioral health field professionally for, maybe 15 years or so. You have to be able to read people, you have to be able to empathize, and at the same time you have to be aware of your surroundings for your own safety. There's nothing like getting the on-the-job training. because there's things in textbook that don't teach you what's actually out there in the street.
Half an hour or so later, a call comes in on the radio. We jump in a van and hit the road.
The dispatch that we received stated that the caller was mom calling on behalf of her daughter, who's a kiddo. The kiddo was making statements that she wanted to hurt herself.
Teams like this tend to work in pairs, and today Rosalind's working with Angel, who's driving.
Sometimes it comes natural. Sometimes I can tell by the dispatch what I am better not equipped to handle, so I tell her, you handle that one.
Other than the information that there's a teenager threatening to hurt their mother, there isn't a whole lot for Rosalind and Angel to go on, but they've got 40 minutes or so to come up with a plan.
With this situation, we're going to go ahead and approach it by talking to mom first, and then with her consent, we'll go ahead and talk to the kiddo.
So we're just pulling up in front of a white bungalow on a very quiet suburban street. I wasn't able to go in with Rosalind and Angel, so Matthew and I wait in the car.
Once they feel like they understand what's going on, they're going to look at a couple of different types of resolutions. So our goal is always to do the least invasive treatment.
Hi folks. Hey, so Rosalind and Angel have just come back. How did that go?
Well, prior to getting here, it appeared as if mom and child pretty much resolved their own issue. The daughter really just wanted some attention, from mom. She needed something from mom. Mom was like, I'm not having it today, and was not responding in the way that the kiddo wanted her to respond. So it was some of those acting out behaviors.
Rosalind and Angel used a checklist to assess both the caller and her teenage daughter, as well as sitting down and chatting over a cup of tea. After spending an hour or so inside, they established that the teenager was in no immediate danger, and they recommended that she keep seeing a regular psychiatrist and taking her medication. They also provided the phone number for a peer-to-peer counselling helpline, and another team will follow up in a few weeks to see how mum and daughter are getting on.
On average, we're going to be resolving these calls in the community 70 to 80% of the time. That's always what we're going to do as our first option.
If the teenager had needed further care, Rosalind and Angel could have driven her to an inpatient hospital, where a trained psychiatrist would be on hand to assess her and prescribe medication and treatment such as therapy or counselling.
What our goal is the prevention. Intervene and prevent this from happening again, helping them to use their coping skills, maybe come up with new coping skills.
As well as by calling 911, teams like this can also be reached directly by calling a special helpline, which is what retired Phoenix resident Terry did when his 30-year-old son was in trouble.
My adopted son, he has fetal alcohol syndrome, so he has a lot of physical health issues, and a couple of years ago he was having open heart surgery the next day, and his girlfriend called and said he was out running in traffic. He was trying to die. He was trying to get somebody to run him over because he was so anxious about his surgery on his heart.
Terry rushed over immediately to his son's apartment, where the mental health responders were already waiting outside.
And they showed up, and I was out by the gate. I had to push the button for the gate to let them in to his apartment complex. And when I saw them, I looked in, and they didn't look very professional. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. But by the time I got to his apartment, they had him talking like best friends. They were sitting on the floor next to his bed, and he was talking to them like he'd known him forever. I mean, it was just beautiful.
The helpline that Terry called has recently been incorporated into a nationwide mental health crisis line that people across America can reach by calling the 3-digit number 988. However, the nationwide helpline is still very much in its infancy, and whilst they promise that a call will be answered 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, some states don't yet have the teams of social workers nor the deep integration with the emergency services that they have here in Arizona.
I would say that we kind of forced mental health and types of social work issues and stuff onto the police over the last 40 years. You know, we're not asking police to become experts in mental health, we're just simply asking them to learn to identify these things when it's a good fit for a different type of profession. And that's the real beauty here.
Craig, how did this feel, being in the van and going out with them?
Yeah, it was really interesting to see how it works in practice on the ground. And it's clear they're making a massive difference too.
But is it safe? You know, they're going out there responding to these 911 calls without police officers.
Call handlers like Carla.
This weekend, it is the newly launched RB17 hypercar, but this was the first hypercar he made, the Aston Martin Valkyrie, which will be joining the World Endurance Championship in the hypercar class very, very soon. China, making their foray into the supercar world here. This BYD's luxury division. Today was the Ferraris and Bugattis, Goodwood, the automotives were slipping and sliding all throughout that supercar patch. And what a wonderful display of supercars. You missed them, we'll be having them later on today. But of course we kick things off with the Superman, driven by Sergio Perez, picking up David Green. Checo, you've swapped your Formula 1 car for a van.
Yeah, for a very fast van. Yeah, it's nice, you know. Unfortunately, I don't know the circuit, so as much as I wanted to push, it's a little bit hard and narrow to know where to go, but the fan is incredibly fast.
It's got more horsepower than your Formula 1 car.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it is faster than my F1 in terms of starting, you know. When you jump on throttle, I cannot hold my head forwards.
We saw you go off the start line pretty quickly.
Yeah, it starts really quickly. It's a really fast car.
Of course, so this is actually the first time you've ever gone up the hill?
First time ever, yeah. And the last time I was in Goodwood, I was with McLaren, but I don't think I did the circuit. I did more of a show run, so really enjoyable.
Of course, you're here today as part of the big Red Bull celebration. 20 years of Red Bull we're celebrating here at the Festival of Speed, and this is just part of the story.
Yeah, definitely, you know, and also with Ford, you know, to have this, it's incredible.
And obviously powertrains coming to Red Bull for F1.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a massive project down the line. So yeah, looking forward to the future as well with Red Bull.
Formula 1, obviously you get not many weekends off in the end. You managed to come here for one of them. How's the season been going so far?
The last few races have been tough. We haven't had just a straightforward one, so looking forward to it. Hopefully we can turn on, you know, there's still plenty of races to go, so hopefully we are able to turn the page around and get back to our form that we had earlier in the year.
Fantastic. We'll be seeing you up the hill and anything else today?
Yes, I think I'm driving something else later.
Enjoy the weekend. He'll be driving some Red Bull Formula 1 cars up the hill later, celebrating the 20th anniversary of Red Bull racing Sergio Perez there. Right, that's the supercars done and dusted, but we've got all things ranging here at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. And if rally is your thing, well, you can head up to the Forest Rally stage and check out all things rally. And let's check in with them and take a look back at what's been going on up on the stage.
Duckworth off the line, the champion.
Yeah, the reigning champion, the defending champion of these honours here at the Forest Rally stage. He's up against it in terms of competition this year. Can he deliver on this shootout? It was Ollie Mellors yesterday who was fastest through, so Duckworth's got a little bit of work to do.
Mark Brumfield alongside him, his faithful co-driver. Winners of many national rallies, including the Sunseeker and including the Rally Sprint Series that happened with the twin track up at Silverstone.
We're really not going very quickly here.
No, we have an issue, don't we? We're not quite sure what it is, but let's hope they're clear of
past the flying finish.
Yep.
Yeah, Gary Lecordu is second fastest, 2:49.5, but Stuart van der Putten at 3:42.2.
Martin Overington on the line now. The 6R4 did a 2:59.5 yesterday. We'll be wanting to do better than that as we cut back to Roger Duckworth. And as Bex has pointed out, winner of last year's shootout. So the competitive edge will be very high. And Roger carrying great speed through that very, very long right-hander, as we can see the MG S2000 screaming his head off. Great high-revving engines.
Yeah, but that normally aspirated engine sound is great. Real racing engine.
Yeah.
Nice to hear that on the rally stages. And this is the 1986 Metro 6R4 Martin Overington. This is the 2.5 V6, and this is the Ram Sport car, which was actually originally a tarmac car used by Stephen Price. And it had a big accident on the Manx rally, and then it was totally rebuilt by Ram Sport. But then we look at the colour scheme, which goes back to the Golden Wonder Crisps, and that reminds Zav and I in particular of the Scottish Air Traffic Controller, Ken Wood, who also rallied a big Rover V8 in the same colours of the Golden Wonder Crisp. But it is about the sponsorship, it is also about the wonderful colours of rallying, as we see the Subaru and time.
Okay. 2:37.1 for Roger Duckworth. That was a fantastic run through the stage.
He's throwing down the gauntlet, isn't he?
He really is.
Yep, yesterday was a 2:43.5 now.
So off go the Iron Dames.
Yeah, the Rally 2 Fiesta.
So this will be great. They did well yesterday. Julianne Blard, Sarah Rameau, and the Rally 2 Fiesta, the Stefan Sarazan car, and branching out Iron Dames now into rallying. This is their first foray. They're going racing. They do equestrian events. They've had success at Le Mans. They've had success at Imola. Now you're looking at the Metro 6R4, which has done well in shootouts, previous shootouts. It really has. It has a fantastic sound from that engine as well. A real V6 racing engine. And those spoilers there, front, top, and the experimental 6R4 in the early days. In fact, I was doing the Peter Russick tour in a Talbot Sunbeam, and I was going on a downhill section, and I crashed into some gate posts because I had a sponsor, a fresh fruit company, and all the fruit came into the footwell, and I promise you I couldn't brake because it was full of apples and oranges and pears, and I hit this big gate post, and the car went off, and it was bent like a banana anyway, and there was no one around. I just heard this clapping from the hillside, and then someone doing this and signalling to me, and it was Tony Pond and Rob Arthur sitting up the hill who'd seen the whole thing, because about 400 yards further down the experimental Metro had broken down, and they'd watched my antics, and they were just slow clapping like, you absolute idiot. There you go, I got caught, got spotted.
Martin Overington out over Flying Finn. Martin, who did a time yesterday of 2:59.5, will certainly want to improve on that. 2.5 engine pulling very nicely. 301.9. And there's Ollie Mellors in.
Yesterday's shootout winner is back for the defence of that. Let's see what kind of time we will see him set today.
Well, yesterday 2:32.2. I'm sure he'd be trying extremely hard to beat that.
Now, for Sarah Rameau, who you see behind the wheel here, it wasn't until 2021 that she started her rallying career with Julie alongside. They scooped the French women's title in the championship that year, and they've just gone on to bigger and better things. So she's still very early on in her rallying career.
Absolutely.
Just a few years ago, yet such natural talent behind the wheel. And for Rameau, it's second fastest here, 2:38.2 is the time. Still Roger Duckworth holding the fastest time on the shootout stage. 237.1. I believe it might... Has it started raining, boys? I'm hearing... we've got sunshine really blaring into the commentary unit here, but I'm hearing it might have started raining.
Oh, we'll look at the camera lens and we'll see if it has any effect of where it's falling.
So just where the Delta Donut is, right at the southern edge of the track, we believe there's some light rain there at the moment. That can make that tarmac really slippy, as if it wasn't slippy enough already to the area where we're seeing the Proton right now.
Because, Bex, that all the way down the hill there, the rocks and the rubble and the dust and the debris are dragged onto that surface, and it already has a lot of dust over the top and bits of mud from the earlier rain, and it is very, very slippy indeed. And as Mark Higgins reported, you don't get a lot of grip. Now, James Williams, Ross Whittock, what can they do on the shootout? This is the man who won the Manx Rally earlier this year. That's a big, very, very fast rally. He's leading the British Asphalt Championship, and he's gone off like... No, I can't say that, can I? But he's gone off like a rocket. He absolutely has.
He started like a rocket, let's say it like that. So he shot off like a rocket. I mean, it was an amazing start from James Williams. It was purposeful and it was precise. That's what's going to win you the time out there today on this shootout. We love seeing the flamboyant stuff in all the demo runs, but you want to set the fastest time today, you've got to be pitch perfect. It's a 2:32.8 from Ollie Mellors in the Proton Iris R5.